right. Welcome to Jerome and Real Estate. I'm Jerome, your local realtor here in the Fountain and Colorado Springs area. Today, I've brought in an expert in home inspections because I believe it's something that's extremely important. And, people I talk to, clients that I've come across, don't really understand the general need and importance of home inspections. So basically, what I want to do is bring on Wayne Helm here, and we're going to have a quick discussion regarding home inspections. And we'll talk a little bit about him. Matter of fact, we'll do that first. So, Wayne, welcome to the channel. And why don't you introduce yourself a little bit?
Thank you, Jerome. Yeah, my name is Wayne Helm. I own a Housemaster Home Inspection franchise here in Colorado Springs, and I service the Colorado Springs territory.
All right, awesome. So, how did you get into that line of work?
Um, I was actually, I wanted to be a home inspector when I lived back in the Midwest. It was a little bit of a process back then, and I didn't have the time. And since I had moved to Colorado and the opportunity came up to purchase a franchise of home inspecting, I I did some research and I landed on Housemaster and did the certification and the training, and here I am today, a couple years later.
All right, awesome. So, before we really get into it, what about just personally, can you let us in on a little bit about who Wayne Helm is?
Sure. I was born and raised in Minnesota, back in the Midwest. Went to college in Marshall, Minnesota. I was actually went to college for restaurant management chef training. I was in the Air Force in the late 80s, early 90s, and I was actually a cook in the Air Force. And so that was kind of my life, running restaurants and being a cook. And through the career of the numerous years of different times, I ended up getting into sales and really loving the aspect of being with people and meeting new people, being able to sell them different things throughout my career. And a couple of years ago, I had an opportunity to get into my own business during a pandemic, and I started uh, being a home inspector, and that's kind of how I landed over here.
Okay, awesome. So, once again, I'm speaking with a fellow veteran. So that's awesome. Definitely love those connections, man. I like to keep these connections strong. So, let's go ahead and get into it then. I think one of the big questions that we need to go over is why it's important for a homeowner to have an inspection, especially if they are thinking about just purchasing their new home.
I feel it's important to get a home inspection for the reason being is the people that are purchasing the home have only been in the home probably only a few minutes, whether it was different trips, different times to come back and look at the house. In today's industry, you have a very short window, a very small window. So
Yeah.
you're possibly in the house for 15 minutes. I'm sure they've had numerous conversations with you, the real estate agent, but they don't really know what they're buying. And this is a very large purchase. And so I think it's important that they get a home inspection. The home inspector is somebody that can go through from top to bottom and really take a look at if there's any issues with the house. Is there any structural issues? Is there any safety issues? Is everything mechanically running that should be running with the house, from the air conditioner to the furnace to the water heater to the garbage disposal to the dishwasher, anything else that might be staying in the house, washer and dryer. Make sure the roof is sound. In Colorado, especially in the Colorado Springs area, we get a lot of hail from time to time, and you just have to make sure that the roof, one, is in good shape, and number two, that it was, if it was repaired, it was repaired correctly.
Okay, gotcha. So, what do you say to people who, you know, are they call themselves handymen? They are very good at fixing things around either their apartment or the current home that they live in. Now they're switching out. They're about to purchase a new home, and they feel like, okay, well, you know what? Why do I need to hire a home inspector when I'm pretty handy? I can tell when something's, wrong with the home. I can do my own little inspection. What do you say to those people?
Well, I really don't want to knock anybody because somebody might have a relative that might be that handyman or might have that neighbor or close friend that is that handyman. They may know what they're doing, and maybe they know what they're looking for. With a home inspector, generally, in mostly any other state, I think there's maybe one other besides Colorado, but Colorado, you don't have to be a certified home inspector to do home inspections at this time. But I still feel that it's important that you do get a certified home inspector because one, there's training that we go through that maybe a handyman hasn't gone through. There might be certain things that we try to look at all aspects of the house. A handyman may be good with decks and patios or additions, but you may not know everything there is to know about electrical work or the safety of a garage door opener. So
Got
that
you.
there's certain aspects where I think it's important to have a certified home inspector.
And could you speak a little bit about, the certification aspect and, just roll right into, okay, how do I check to see that I've got a certified inspector?
Sure, that's a good question. I so there's many different certifications that or certification companies that certify. So like InterNACHI is actually based here in Colorado, up in Boulder. They certify home inspectors through a rigorous study and test procedure. There's another company called ASHI, ASHI, that also does certification of home inspectors. There's another one called NIBI. There's numerous other ones out there that do the certification.
Hmm.
So for somebody to actually be able to search for a certified home inspector, you would actually probably need to know where they have their certification. So if a customer is calling home inspectors, that would be a question that they should probably ask is, okay, are you certified? And B, where did you get your certification? And then that customer can do their research at that point.
Okay, got it. That's good to know. Um, all right. So how about once you've been hired, right? Why don't you tell everyone, what they should expect from you as an inspector, and then also, what not to expect, run through that a little bit.
Sure. So what you can expect from a home inspector is it's a visual inspection. So I have a procedure that I use. It's going to be different from another home inspector, what procedure he uses. But generally, I start with the water heater and the furnace, and I work my way throughout the house, depending on if that's in the attic or it's in the basement. That's where I start. And then once I go through all the nuts and bolts of the house, I finish in taking a look in the attic to make sure the rafters and joists and the proper ventilation, the proper insulation, and all of those aspects. I don't want to get into every single detail of the home
Yeah,
inspection.
exactly.
So, and then I go to the outside, and that's when I start looking at the outside, whether the GFCIs are working, whether the outdoor faucets are operational, making sure the ground slope is away from the house, making sure there's no other signs of insect infiltration, or making sure you inspect the patios or the decks, make sure there's no trip hazards or safety issues with the deck.
You actually just touched on something here that might be kind of a little bit of a golden nugget if we can get it answered, because people do ask me this quite a bit. The GFCIs, can you clarify, um, in our area, Colorado Springs area, Colorado, when do you actually need to have a GFCI outlet? And maybe explain what it is as well.
So a GFCI is a ground fault circuit interrupter. So let's say you're in the kitchen and you touch an electrical cord that might be plugged in, and then you accidentally touch water, or you reach for the sponge in the sink or something to wipe up a mess, and you're making that connection between the electrical appliance and the water. You're now the grounding force, which will trip the ground fault interrupter and save a life. So those
Okay.
those GFCIs need to be located within a certain radius of any water. So that's why they're
Mm,
outside, because the ground could be wet when you're plugging in the extension cord. They could be out on a patio or a deck because again, there could be water, moisture coming down, snow, rain, whatever. And you're going to see them in kitchens and in bathrooms
okay, awesome. Yeah,
and
thanks for
garages.
mentioning in garages, you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for answering that, because that is something that does come up quite a bit. And most people don't realize, why some outlets are GFCI and some are not. So that'd be good. Um, okay. Now, as you're going through the home, you're checking it, you're doing your normal checks. What are some of the liabilities that you may run into, or that you are subject to in a profession like this?
So I I guess some of the liabilities that I look for, here my mindset is on the person buying this home. They're already making a large purchase on
Yeah,
buying this home. I want to make sure that there's not going to be any large purchases coming up in the very near future after they purchase a home. So, are they going to have to spend X amount of dollars on a new roof? Are they going to have to repair anything that is unseen up in the attic, whether it's broken rafters or joists? Is there any water damage that just around some of the vents, or something that can cause a problem in the very near future? I also want
yeah,
to make sure that the furnace is operational, and how old is it? Same thing with the water heater. Is it operational, and how old is it? Because if you can determine the age and the life expectancy of a unit like that, you can pretty much determine if there's going to be a large expense sometime in the next X amount of months after they purchase the home. And my job is to make sure I give that buyer that information so that they can have it in their mind. Okay, this water heater is getting a little old. Within the next year or 5, I may be putting in a new water heater.
yeah.
Whether or not they want to use that as a negotiation tool when they're purchasing the house, or they just are ready for that expense. So
Okay.
it's more of an informational process.
Yeah. So it's basically just a way to help further prepare the buyer and make sure they have all the information at their fingertips that they'll need, right?
Yes.
Okay. Um, Two things that I'd like to get into a little bit. So, especially here in Colorado, could you talk a little bit about radon and what type of checks you go through to check for that or verify the levels?
Sure. So with radon, you have to have a certification, and I got mine through United Infrared. So what that does, it allows me to be able to test for radon gas in a listing. If the buyer wants or chooses to have that radon test, then I'll go in with my certified and tested and calibrated radon testing units, and I'll put that in the lowest livable area of the house. And the minimum amount that you test is 48 hours, and you can go up to 100 and or plus hours to really test the variance of when you have the most gases coming through the house or into the listing.
Yeah.
So generally, and I do a 48-hour test on a listing because we're on a smaller time frame window. So I will test it, and if it tests above 4 picocuries, I'm sorry, above 3.9 picocuries, then I'll recommend that there should be a mitigation that should be brought into the house. And that's a whole nother discussion. I am not a certified mitigation person, so I do not do any mitigation. I just do the testing.
Hmm.
So if it's 3.9 and below, then we don't recommend any mitigation. But it's something that you should test for every 2 years. We live in Colorado, and so Colorado obviously is on we're on a big bed of granite, and that's where radon gas generally comes from, is from
Okay.
the granite, the gases that are released from granite. Anytime you disturb that soil, whether you're putting in a foundation or you're putting in drainage system around the house, anytime you disturb that soil, now the gases have a good chance of coming up. And even if it's a brand new foundation, there's no cracks, there's nothing, it can still come through the the, the cement. And I also
Yeah.
find if there's any cracks or if something didn't get sealed, it's going to find its way through that foundation. And
Yeah.
so once we test and we find out that there needs to be mitigation, then that's up to the mitigation company to find out how they're going to seal that area, whether it's a crawl space or a basement, and how they're going to try to get that gas out from underneath your foundation and get it out above the roof line of the house.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad you went into a little bit more detail on that. When I moved to Colorado, everyone was talking about the whole radon thing, and I just wasn't clear on it, you know? So having that understanding of what it is, where it's coming from, and I've actually done a little bit of research, and from what I hear, radon is actually the second largest cause of lung cancer. Are you hearing that too, or is that an accurate statistic?
Yes, and that's I think one of the biggest misconceptions of radon is that they don't realize that it causes lung cancer, and it's the number two leading cause of lung cancer. So you have cigarette smoke is number one, and radon is number two. Then there's a bunch of other causes of lung cancer, but um, radon is an important issue that people don't. It's an odorless, it's a tasteless gas that nobody even knows that it's around you, and anytime that it snows, it covers the ground, and so now that radon gas can't come out as easy as it was, so it'll find another way and it'll come up through the house. So you'll see peaks of radon gas during different seasons and different climate changes throughout that property.
Man, that is nuts.
We
Okay.
well, we do also suggest that anytime you do any changes to the house, so let's say you put in new windows,
Yep.
you should probably have a radon test. You put on new siding, you should probably have a radon test. You put on a new roof, you should probably have a radon test. Anytime you do anything structurally, any structural improvements to the house, you should actually get a radon test.
Huh. Okay. Got it.
So let's say you put on new windows on your
Yeah.
house. What you did is you could have sealed that house a little bit
Sealed it
tighter.
in.
So
Oh,
now the
yeah.
radon's going to stay in that house and it's going to accumulate within that house.
That makes
That's
sense.
what the mitigation system does. That it pulls that gas out of the house and
Yeah.
out. So anytime you put new siding on, you're going to seal that house a little tighter. You put on a new roof, you could change the vents, or maybe some of the vents were clogged or whatever. I don't know what the instance may be, but
Yeah.
anytime that you do something structural to the house, you should have it tested.
Got it. Got it. Appreciate that. So there's, one more thing that I wanted to go over, and that was the sewer scope. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is, what it entails, and how you go about it?
Sure, there's many different types of equipment that are out in the market that anywhere from plumbers to home inspectors. There's a various types of equipment. What we use generally is a camera system with approximately 100 to maybe 200 feet of wire, and it has a camera on the end of it with a light. And so what we do is we find a clean out within the house. Sometimes it's outside the house on some of the newer builds. Some of the older builds, it's inside the house. Some of the older houses, they don't have clean outs at all. So you might have to go through, um, maybe you have to pull a toilet and you can scope the sewer lines from there, or you can go through the vent up on the roof if you have a small enough camera and you can get to the sewer line from there. And so what we do is we go through and we put the camera in the sewer line and we start recording, or we can take pictures with our equipment, and we run a line all the way out to where the your line would hook up with the city sewer system. It's generally anywhere from 50 to 100 feet, possibly. Every 100 feet, there should be another clean out. So
Yeah.
you should be able to check it out. Generally, most city curbs are within 100 feet of the house anyways. So um, there's going to be other instances, but We look for, is there any root systems that are coming from trees are some of the biggest cause of your sewer system
Uh,
issues.
okay.
So if you have a mature trees, mature bushes, that's where you're going to find some of your bigger issues. That those roots, they try to find food and they try to find water, and what better place than a sewer line? With our
Yeah.
dry climate, those roots go deep, and so once they find a cracked clay tile or maybe even just a little splice, those roots are going to find their way in there, and the roots start so small and they just get bigger and bigger and they start causing those cracks and bigger issues. And then the roots come in even fuller and it ends up clogging up the system.
Okay.
Tho-
Got
those
it.
those types of repairs are expensive. They can range anywhere from 5 to 10, 15, $20,000. And anything from your house to the curb where the city line is generally located is your responsibility as a homeowner.
Hmm.
And that's another reason why we put it into the home inspection, is because that's a major expense that you could incur once you purchase a house. If you did not know that there was an issue, um, that could be a huge expense for you as a home buyer.
So let's roll right into that. What is the average cost for you, or what are your um, costs as far as the inspection, the radon test, and the sewer scope? What should clients expect?
So I run a package deal. So if somebody has me just do a radon test, nothing else, it's going to be 180 bucks, $185. If you want just a sewer scan, it's going to be $185. If you happen to get a home inspection and you want to have the sewer scan and the radon, what I do is I bundle that together and you can save 50 bucks or 60 bucks off the package. So what I try to do is bring it down to 150 bucks a piece if you buy them together. That it's important to me that the home, if there's anything to me that's important, and that's why I included it in part of my pricing, is the radon and sewer scan, because those are two big safety and structural issues that you really need to know as a home buyer because they're unseen. You won't see it on any disclosures. You won't see it because nobody knows if they have radon in their house or not.
Right.
But in Colorado, one out of every 10 houses has a, a, a higher level of radon. And with some of the mature houses that we have here in Colorado Springs, and you see a lot of the taller trees, and like I said earlier, with the drier climate, those roots go deep. And so those 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 are some key indicators within Colorado Springs of why those two items are very important as part of the home inspection. And
Gotcha.
if you look, and I can give you an average cost of a home inspection. They might range anywhere from $300 to $400, depending on. It might go up with the age of your house. It might go up with the size of your house. Every
Hmm.
home inspection company is different on how they do their pricing. I base mine off from square feet. So a basic home inspection is going to be 350 bucks. That'll get you a 3,000 and below square foot house. And then if it's any older than, I believe, the 1980s, I start adding another $25 for older homes. What we do is I also discount, because we are in such a large military community. I do discount $50 off from any home inspection on top of the combo discount with the radon and sewer scan. So a person
Okay.
can save $100 off a home inspection from me.
Nice. And that's specifically for active duty, or does it extend to vets as well?
It extends to vets, and honestly, I've even passed on the discount if they had an uncle. I want to make
Gotcha.
sure that we support anybody that's been associated with military family members. They also sacrifice a lot, so
Yep.
um,
Yep.
I'm pretty flexible with that.
Awesome. Definitely appreciate it. Well, I thank you for, spending the time giving us a general overview. I mean, some of it was actually very detailed as well, and we got a couple good gold nuggets out of there. So thanks for taking the time. And, for everybody out there that's watching, can you give us a quick rundown on, how prospective buyers can research you, find out more about your services, and get in touch with you.
Sure. Well, thanks for that, Jerome. So you can search Housemaster Home Inspections of Colorado Springs, and then that my website will pop up. And in that website, it has my different certifications on there. And then I also donate a certain amount of my proceeds every month between my Housemaster franchise and my other businesses. I donate every month back to um, St. Jude Children's
Oh, nice.
Hospital, and it's a very important thing that's near and dear to my heart, and so I give back to them as well. And so you'll also see that on my website. But you can schedule, you can get a quote, you can get a hold of me by email, via phone number. So it's wayne.helm at housemaster.com is my email, or my phone number is 719-357-5273. And I take text messages, phone calls, and I generally answer back rather quickly. So if anybody wants to get a hold of me and have more questions, feel free to ask.
All right, awesome. So definitely appreciate you coming on. For anybody watching, just remember all of Wayne's contact information I'm actually going to post below this video in the description. So if you didn't have time to get that down, just go ahead and open up the description and I'll get it to you. Wayne, I really appreciate it. Thank you, and have a good one, man.
Thank you, Jerome. I appreciate your time.
All right, we'll have you back on.